strength. She taught me not to take shit from anybody. She was very. They called her Mata Piquera because she was like always in the.
Sounds like a Martha.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've my whole life I hated the name because I had never seen somebody young with the name.
With the name.
And I feel like I'm growing into it. All the Marthas that I now know or know of were pretty badasses.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, you know, I hated it for so long. And now I'm like, meh, it suits me.
It definitely. I think it does. I think it does. So, Martha, I started following you. I think I saw you, if I'm not mistaken, on Louder with Crowder a couple years ago. And then I was like, wait, she's Cuban? She's from Miami? What's she doing on such a big show? And then so I dig your vibe. I don't think I've ever had another libertarian on the show. So
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an honor.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a libertarian?
150,000%. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
definitely not a Republican. I'm definitely not a Democrat. So
Yeah, same.
yeah, very libertarian. My philosophy is leave me alone. Leave people alone.
Leave people alone.
Yeah.
Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the episode.
You know, it's not that hard.
It's not that complicated at all.
No, and you know, it's like we all want like certain things, right? And it starts off with like good feelings. Like you don't want somebody else to hurt you. You want to protect them. So you're like, well, they shouldn't be able to do this thing. But then the flip side of how you accomplish that hurts a lot of people. And so
100%.
it's like, well, you're not moral if you don't think that everybody, like nobody should do drugs. Yeah, no, I understand that you might think that doing drugs is immoral, but then the flip side of that, like how we accomplish those things, those are super immoral. Taking somebody's rights away and throwing them into a cage because they decided to use something, that's super immoral. You're taking a father from their children, a mother from their children. Like even if that mother and father made a mistake, they deserve the clemency to, or you know, the just the ability to rehabilitate themselves and get better, not to be thrown in a cage, not to be given this title of a felon so that they can no longer work, so that their things can be taken from. Like the consequences from those behaviors are so bad. And I find it so hard that these moral people that are like, I go to church every Sunday, can't see that. And to me, that's just one of those.
Which is the opposite of what the religion preaches, right? Like love your neighbor.
Right.
And it's, oh no, but don't love them if they do this.
Don't love them if they're not perfect.
Yeah.
And I feel that so intently because none of us are perfect.
I try to have this discussion with Christians all the time because I have dear friends of mine that are hard, like followers of Christ and everything. I'm not a Christian, but I'm a person that seeks wisdom. I don't try to poke holes in things. I try to find connections. So I try to learn from all religions and all faiths because, you know, people don't like when I say this, but it's my perspective is humans saw this, right? They saw my ring 150,000 years ago. You see the silver and I see the diamond, but we're looking at the same thing. I call it a diamond and you call it silver. That doesn't mean it's different.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my philosophy on like why religions think a certain way, say certain things, because they all throughout human history we all kind of saw the same things, but we just interpret them differently. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, basically most religions for the most part are trying to teach you to be a good person, don't hurt other people. There's a divine purpose to everything.
Don't judge.
Yeah. That's a big one, right?
That is a big one, you know? It's like the most, you know, religious people who study the Bible or the Torah or whatever it is, and their God tells them that only he can judge. But then they come to earth and they're like, I'm going to judge you because I don't trust God to judge you in the future.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I don't understand.
Agreed.
And it's hard because I'm not a religious person. I am a very spiritual person.
I am. That's how I describe myself as
Exactly. I don't, I'm not from any religion. I grew up Catholic and I saw those inconsistencies in my life and I can't subscribe to them. I saw how the Catholic Church themselves hid people who were abusing children. And I see how the Catholic Church has at the forefront of it, a communist. And so none of these things are godly. And so
100%.
when you're telling me that, you know, these are the people that should, like tell me how I should live my life. I'm like, wow. A communist and people who hide child molestation and whatever and move them to new churches. Like, no, I'm sorry. I cannot agree with this at all.
Yeah, I
And
agree
I don't
100%.
want that.
And then the funny thing is how I don't understand how Catholics worship the Pope, and it's like, wait, aren't you only supposed to worship God? So why are you worshiping a man?
Because it's God's representation on earth. Listen, I don't
No,
think
it's
God
not.
was a communist. I mean, when he said help your neighbors, he never said steal from people first, take everything they own
Agreed.
so that you can help other people.
Yeah.
I mean, they clearly missed a lesson along the line.
100%.
And I don't mean this in like a disparaging way. I certainly respect religion. I respect people who are religious. But I think that a lot of times religion does really bad things.
People do bad things in the name of religion.
In the name of religion, exactly. And so just because you're religious doesn't mean anything to me.
I agree. I
Yeah.
mean, a great example. Again, I'm not saying Christianity or religion is bad. What I'm saying is, going back to what I just said, is people that do things in the name of religion. Look at the Crusades. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Look at circumcision.
Yeah.
That's a big topic for me.
That's literally mutilating somebody because it's a religious thing. You know,
Taking their body autonomy away from them because God told me to do so. That's a hard one for me. If God asked me to hurt somebody else, I would have to question if I'm really hearing God.
Yeah, like in Deuteronomy, there's sections that say, go attack these people, kill them all and bring me the spoils of war. I don't really think God would really say that, right?
Not the God that I believe in.
Yeah, me neither. And there's such a stark difference between the New Testament and the Old Testament. Again, I'm just using the Bible, but yeah, like the stark difference in God in the Old Testament and the New Testament is pretty flabbergasting. Like, he goes from this super jealous, raging guy who just kills all of humanity every few thousand years to being the most merciful, loving being in existence. So it's interesting what people subscribe to and what people think is okay in the name of, because it's this.
Mm-hmm.
No, but that's God. So it's the creator of the universe created us, so why would he want to hurt us?
And if the creator of the universe created us in his image, why would he demand that you change that image in any way in order to belong to his religion? Wouldn't he have made you perfect the way you are? I mean, and that's the other thing. We've long preached to children, like, love yourself the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. But hold on. First, let me give you a cosmetic surgery. Like, and so many examples. This is just one that people know me for because they really don't like that point. So I love to bring it up. And I would love, nothing makes me happier than when somebody tells me that they did not circumcise their child because they read something I wrote or saw something I said, and it changed their perspective. It just one child at a time. That's all we can do.
Did you have that? Did you post that? This must have been a long time ago, but I think I saw it on your page. It was like a graphic showing like the benefits of like not being circumcised versus being circumcised.
I don't remember, but probably.
It probably was your page.
Sounds like something I would post.
I read it and I was like, I've never thought I'd find a post about circumcision so educating, So
it's a lot of lies, and when you go down, so it's like anything else. When you follow a rabbit hole, and I tend to follow all the rabbit holes. So it started off as like I'd always held this belief. I have 3 sons, and this was something that I had to decide for them. So of course I did my due diligence, and I was like, wait, what? You want me to, like, this perfect baby that I'm spending 9 months and, worried, and I didn't have any coffee and I didn't have any Coca-Cola products, and I was like, no caffeine, like, limit my sugar. But then the day he's born, I'm going to be like, yeah, no, go ahead and just give him a cosmetic surgery. So I always held this belief, but then, the whole, like, we should be able to transition children came into, and I'm like, I saw a lot of people on the right were like, you cannot do this thing. And I agree with them. But then it's like, but also you do this thing to them without their consent. So at least, when they're 15, 16, they have a say in it.
Right.
So I think what you're doing is worse. And they attacked me. On the first time I ever posted about circumcision, I lost like 500 plus people. They just unfollowed me. I can't believe you, and I was like, ooh, I hit a nerve. I especially hit a nerve with, I think, Republicans that were like, Democrats want to, mutilate children. And I was like, so do you. And they're like, unfollow. Cannot think this through. Must, And so I was like, I see it. And it's Like, where do we go from here? If you can't see your own faults, how are you judging the faults of others?
And how you ever going to improve as a person?
Right.
You're not.
You're not. Accept the responsibility. And I mean, there's tons of people that have a hard time with that because they did this to their kids. And so I understand it. Like, you know, accepting that you did something more often than not because, you know, you didn't know any better. But then I went down the rabbit hole and I've gone through the history of it. I've gone through how it came to America because it's a religious thing for most people. But in America, it's not. In America, it's just a cosmetic thing. And then they're told, well, it helps with STDs. It helps with AIDS. Well, we've only had AIDS since the 80s. Why were you circumcising before AIDS? Oh, no, but then it helped with gonorrhea. No, it doesn't. Oh, but it helped with, Dr. Kellogg, the same person who created the cereal and the same person who was totally anti-masturbation, he proposed not only pinning babies' wrists down, boys' hands down, so that they couldn't touch themselves when they're infants, but he also proposed circumcision as a way to stop masturbation. And it's stuck since then. That is where it started in America, at least.
Wow. You know what that reminds me of? So you got the cereal guy telling people about what to do with their sons' bodies. You know, now you have Bill Gates, who's like a computer guy telling people what to do with like vaccination and food.
Bill Gates is a great segue. He also he's spent his own money and spent U.S. money on his plan to circumcise Africa. Over 12 million people have been circumcised in Africa because of Bill Gates. And he pushes it there for HIV prevention, even though there's no research that proves that circumcising somebody will stop the transmission of AIDS. As a matter of fact, you still have to wear a condom. So what is the point? What is the point of doing this? As a matter of fact, you're telling people don't wear a condom because now you're safe. And so they're spreading all kinds of diseases.
Yep.
It's the counter. And we pay taxes because he managed to convince the government, surprise, surprise, that the United States should get involved. So we pay taxes and our taxes are going to this. And I know it's an uncomfortable situation for a lot of people. It's just, it's flabbergasting to me how we've gotten to this point where we're pushing bogus stuff on another community for no reason. What does that benefit anybody in the United States if people in Africa are circumcised?
No benefit whatsoever, actually. Yeah.
I don't get it. I just have to think that it's evil.
I could imagine your life being this big, open, beautiful prairie with a bunch of those prairie holes everywhere, and you just diving down like, and coming back up, and then let me go down another one. You go in. That's cool.
I do. It's a problem.
No, it's not at all.
I have this knowledge that I don't know what to do with.
You're a deep thinker, and deep thinkers are almost non-existent in today's world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I think. What podcast did I see? I don't know if you've heard of Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson. He has a great podcast. He said something like, if you could look at a singular issue and automatically decide what it is, then you're not a deep thinker. Like, if you could look at a singular issue and automatically make up your mind without thinking about it, talking to other people about it, looking into some of the facts, what some other people think about it, well, people with, obviously with, like, who are educated and know that, not just idiots. So he said, you're not a deep thinker if you don't do those things. Because in order to really come up with your own thoughts and your own determination on a subject, you have to see several things, several sides of something.
I agree. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, you're not a man, so you shouldn't be able to. And it's like, no, but I'm a woman and a mother. And so I have to make decisions for both sexes, for my daughter and my sons. And so, a lot of times you're put into this category because you are this thing, you can't think about this thing. And it's like, well, who better to tell other mothers what, this situation than another mother?
Agreed.
So, I mean, thank you. I appreciate the the compliment on being a deep thinker.
Definitely. It's like, that's the reason we have the political, times that we have. Most people, it's just like, I think he also said on that podcast, if more than likely, if in modern days, if you can get someone to say what they think about one issue, you can probably figure out how they feel about all the other issues, and that's terrible. You shouldn't be able to figure out how I feel about every single issue based on one of my opinions.
I agree,
because that means you haven't thought it through.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Like, and we're complicated beings.
We are.
Some of us.
Life. I subscribe to the philosophy that life is simple, but we complicate it.
I agree. Life is pretty simple.
Humans tend to
And
complicate
imagine how
everything.
wonderful it would be if we could just live that simple life.
It'd be pretty nice.
It'd be pretty nice. I mean, if we weren't trying to conquer other people,
Yeah,
tell them how to live their lives,
Yeah,
our
if we-
lives would be pretty awesome.
I would have thought war, 2,000 years into like modern day. What? No, more, because recorded history is like 6,000 years. 6,000 years of recorded history, you would have thought war wouldn't be a thing anymore. We fought enough wars to understand that it's not really the way to.
It's human nature.
It is human nature, unfortunately.
Well, it's human nature to want a ruling class above us, telling us, protecting us, taking care of us. I see a lot of, and don't hate me for this, but I see a lot of, men these days on social media talking about like women just want to be kept and blah, blah, blah. But then those same men will like argue for needing a leader or a president or somebody to control their lives. So it's like, maybe it's not just us women.
Mm.
I think everybody's looking for easy, and government tells you, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to make your life easy. And so we go with it. But are they really?
I mean, government historically is the one group of people who has always deceived and destroyed civilizations. So it's, at this point in humanity, for anyone to be like, yeah, government, you can trust government or any. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't.
I don't get it either. I have. I really try to make sense with it. I see people worshiping political representatives, and I'm like, I don't understand.
These are the wrong people to look up to.
Oh, I don't look up to them. I just see them.
No. I'm saying from the perspective of talking to that person, like,
Yeah.
buddy, these are the wrong people.
These are the wrong people. And then they're like, they seem confused when these people get accused of like really bad actions. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh man. Yeah, it's wild.
How about-
2024 is wild.
It is. It's so wild. The other day somebody sent me a reel and I wish I had it, but they sent it to me probably like a month ago and I don't have it anymore. But it was a U.S. congressman reading out loud. He's like, every time I say something, you got to say NBA or NFL. So he's like, 617 counts of domestic violence. Oh, like there you gotta guess if it's an NBA player and NFL, like what group of people, Oh, NFL. Okay. 347 counts of DUI. Oh, NFL. And he goes down and down and down.
I think I saw this.
And then after like 15 things, he's like, well, both of you, or whether you guessed NFL or NBA, you're wrong. That's actually the U.S. Congress.
Yeah.
And I just, what?
I mean, they're
That's
also
crazy.
stealing from you. Like, there's no
100%.
better stock pickers than people in
And
our Congress.
Politicians.
And so it's like, they make rules for us. And before they make those rules, they know about it. So it's insider trading. They're able to purchase the
Yeah.
stocks. And then they have these, 500+% returns. And it's like,
Bro, it's crazy.
but they had no idea. They're just really good at it. And they just, they're better than Warren Buffett.
That's, that platform Webull? Webull's like a platform where you could trade stocks. They actually have an option to pick within that platform where you could follow Nancy Pelosi stock picks.
I bet you do amazing every year, year after year.
For
You know
sure.
what? I should definitely get into the Nancy Pelosi stock picks because obviously they're winners.
For sure.
Like what am I doing? Not following Nancy Pelosi's lead? Like, dumb me.
For sure.
For
100%.
sure. Oh, man.
And we're over here trying to figure out how to make a living. Oh, my God.
Exactly.
What's wrong with us?
We should just be mooching off of the government the way they mooch off of us.
I agree. That's
No, I do not mooch off the...
No.
No, that is the wrong thing to do. Do not mooch off the government. Let's get rid of them.
That's actually not a bad idea. Do you subscribe to anarcho-capitalism?
I do.
That's a hard one for me.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm definitely a libertarian, but I'm more like a
I'm a minarchist.
minarchist, yes. 100%.
However...
Anarcho is a bit much for me. I don't trust people that
However,
much.
I've saw the takeover of the Libertarian Party, and these are the people that are somehow going to protect us from ourselves in the future. Nah, it's you can't be you can't see what happens within any organization and still think that somehow this is going to help. I think honestly, the way that we live, these societies of cities where we're all congregated in one place and we all have different opinions about different things and we all believe different things, is probably the mistake. I think you need your community, the people that live and want to live the way you do and believe the things you do and make these things. So for all these years, we've been told that segregation is wrong. And of course, segregation based on your skin color is absolutely wrong. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I think that there needs to be some, there's something to be said about segregating yourself based on your beliefs. And so if I lived in a community of like-minded people, of let's say libertarians, we'd be perfectly happy, at least happy enough, because, oh, so-and-so is kind of not a nice person. I don't deal with so-and-so. Like, I don't want to be forced to deal with people that I just don't get along with. And so, maybe that's the thing. I think we should be segregating ourselves based on.
That's an interesting thought. Guys, we're going to hear from our first sponsor. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, the familiar voice of your host, Nelson Rodriguez Jr., taking a quick detour to talk to you about the best jewelry shop on the internet, Gus Villa Jewelry. Let's be honest here, guys. Jewelers in Miami are super shady sometimes. I've even been ripped off once or twice by one of these self-proclaimed alchemists that ended up being these weirdos who sell you a bunch of stuff that make your neck and your fingers turn black. Let me tell you, after I met my boy, Gus Villa, he elevated my bling game. The Gus Villa team, these guys are more than just jewelers. These guys are magicians turning metal and stone into your next head turner. Trust me, these pieces shine so much you can see them from outer space. Head over to GusVillaJewelry.com, and because you're a Monty, that's right, part of the Montana Method crew, you can use the promo code Montana to snatch 5% off your order. You don't just get hooked up with some shine, you get to have some dough in your pocket. Double whammy. So guys, what are you waiting for? Elevate your jewelry game. Show the world what you got. You got some style, you got some bling, you're all blinged up. Come on back after you do that. We've got more Montana Method Madness waiting for you. Now back to the podcast. So, question. So you're the first candidate to ever run on OnlyFans.
As far as I know.
When you say run on OnlyFans, what does that mean?
So, funny. It wasn't my idea.
Okay.
I had a volunteer staff. We ran a very tight campaign. We didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want to raise the money. My opponent raised $2 million. And, if you've ever made $2 million, let alone raised it by offering people something, you know that $2 million is a lot of money. And I could have done a lot of good with that money. I didn't think that raising it to then win a political office was the right move. So I made it a purpose. I said that I would raise $100,000, which is what I needed to send out mailers and that the rest of the way there, I wanted to find alternative methods. I wanted to do things outside of the box. I wanted to show people that you don't have to raise, millions of dollars to actually make a difference. I was wrong. I lost. But
I'm here waiting for the super inspirational story, and she's like, "No."
Hey, listen, you know what? There's more to running a campaign than just sending out mailers and having the better ideas.
Right.
I think that there's a political machine, and you got to be part of that political machine, and you got to be able to pay las boleteras, and there's a lot, especially in Miami, of corruption. But the point was, my good friend Esteban Hernandez, who was part of my campaign, we were sitting around one day, and he's like, "You should do something on OnlyFans." And I was like, "Are you insane? No." And so the next day he calls me up and he's like, "I was being serious." And I was like, "Esteban, I'm not doing that." And I was like, "You know what? I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to ask the campaign manager what he thinks." And so I call him up and I'm like, "Haha, you're never going to believe this. So Esteban wants to do this." And he's like, "I love the idea. I think it's fantabulous." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's 2 against 1. I guess I got to do it." So we put out 4 videos on OnlyFans. And one was the one that got kind of viral, that got me on Steven Crowder's show. And that was, we filmed it very much like a porn style thing, but I was wearing complete clothing. I'm actually wearing less clothing now than I was in that video. Complete clothing. And I basically have a conversation with my opponent about the dirty donations, the dirty politics of what he was receiving. That's so smart. He got donations from Republicans and paid it forward to Democrats. Democrats were fully in favor of abortion up until the day that they're born, until the baby's born. So as a Republican, how could he do, So I pointed that out in the video. I pointed out the money that he was giving, and I did it in a cheeky way. I was like, "Oh, that's so kinky." So it went viral, and it got me thousands upon thousands of dollars of free media, which was my point, which was exactly what I wanted. You know, I got a 5-minute segment on Línea de Fuego on Univision. Every 30-second spot on Univision is thousands of dollars. I got probably close to $50,000 worth of free promotion just on Univision. And yeah, that was my point. If I'm going to be the person that you're going to elect to office, know that this is my method. My method is to think outside the box and to save you as much money as possible, and to do the right thing. And I thought that it got really far.
You did.
And then, you know, the other side with the $2 million won anyways. So
There's my grandfather, one of my great grandmother's many quotes that she passed on to him. He told me one day, he said, "Hay veces cuando pierdes gana. Sometimes when you lose, you win."
wholeheartedly believe that.
So, meaning sometimes the lessons you learn when you lose are way more valuable than winning the war. You know, like,
Absolutely.
because we don't learn much by winning. We learn a lot when we lose, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I think that happened the way it was supposed to, and I'm sure you
Agreed.
learned a whole lot.
I not only learned a whole lot, I think I would have been miserable right now if I was in that seat. Because I don't think that one voice alone on that dais was going to change anything in Miami-Dade County. And I think that the path opened up for me to do other things. I've been working on specific campaigns of things that really mean a lot to me. Before we went on air, I told you about Ross Ulbricht.
Right.
You know, I took that cause to heart. His mom is a dear friend of mine. And, you know, that's something that if I was on the dais, I wouldn't be able to do. I fought the hemp they wanted to make hemp illegal in Florida despite it being legal across the entire United States, and put people in jail over a plant that, you know, we should never have given government even the opportunity to do this. So I was able to work on that. I'm able to do the things that matter to me versus fighting constantly. That would have been torture. So I do agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. Sometimes you
win when you lose.
Sometimes you win when you lose. And I think I also learned a very valuable lesson, and that's just that you're not going to be able to win at that machine by going at it head on. Butting heads is not how we're going to change anything. We're going to change things by changing hearts and minds. I
agree. And as many elements of humanity are not working, there are many that are working. So, for instance, what I do like about the modern age, you know, I don't like social media because of how consumed we are by it, but I do like how information travels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no excuse for being uneducated anymore or not knowing something. I don't know if you know this, but in ancient Greece, you weren't allowed to vote if you weren't educated. So it gets twisted in history. And in history, it's like, oh, yeah, only the rich class voted. Yeah, because only the rich class could afford education. You had to have a certain level of education in order to vote, because you needed to understand certain things in order to pick the leader of that society.
And even that's flawed.
It is, but it's a step in the right direction. No, but our education, yeah, that's a whole nother. Our education system is beyond repair.
I've never used my degree once.
I mean, I'm sure you've probably learned way more after college
than
you did during
YouTube's
college.
Taught me way more than anything I ever learned in college. I mean, college taught me maybe the dedication to see something through, but it took me 8 years, and I had 2 kids in between and starting and finishing college. So even then, it's like,
And you got lucky, because student loans nowadays.
Oh, and I never took out a student loan.
Good for you.
I don't like to make dumb financial decisions, and I've made dumb financial decisions. I mean, Lord knows. But one of them, I knew that if I had to take out a loan to pay for this thing, then it probably wasn't worth it.
Wasn't worth it, 100%.
So I got my degree the old-fashioned way. I worked full-time and took as many classes as I could afford. And lived at home.
That's commendable. And that's dedication.
Yeah. And then I had a kid and moved out and stopped going to school, and then came back when I could afford it again.
That's amazing. You said so you have 3 sons and a girl?
Yeah.
4 kids?
4 kids.
I want to have 4 kids. But I want to have 2 boys and 2 girls.
You know, it's funny. You don't get to choose them.
I know. Ideally.
If you would have asked me before I had kids, I wanted all daughters. And now I think it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. I love that I have one daughter. She is the light of my life. She's
That's awesome.
amazing. But my sons are really cool. I love, like, they're just, yeah, it's awesome. It's taught me a whole other perspective of the world.
For me, it's like I think I'd be able to discipline my sons, but if and when I have a daughter, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I got to introduce you to Dana Martin. She's here in Miami, but she's taught me so much about peaceful parenting that she's changed my life and how I see kids. I used to think that children are here so that we could discipline them, and you'd be surprised. I mean, my kids have taught me so much, and I know it's kooky and wild, and people are like, "Oh my God!" And I think she goes further than I would like to, but I don't think that our job here is to punish or reprimand our children. I think that there's another way of doing things.
Mm.
And I talk to my kids all the time, and we have an amazing relationship. They're not my best friends. They are when they become adults. But they respect me. They respect my opinion because I talk to them truthfully. You know, when we talk about things like drugs, I'm like, you shouldn't do drugs because of X, Y, Z, all these different reasons. But there's a reason why people do drugs. Sure, they feel great. Sure, they're like, they help people escape their reality. If you're unhappy, you're going to be doing drugs. When we have these conversations, so then they'll come to me. They'll be like, "Mom, what do you think about this?" And I'll give them my real point of view. And they're like, "Okay." And they know they can trust my point of view. And they know that even if they go against me and they're like, "I don't agree, I'm still going to do it." I'm like, "And you're going to have to bear the responsibilities of the things that you do." So even my 15-year-old, like if he's like, "I don't want to eat dinner. I want to eat, whatever, McDonald's," something that he knows that I'm like, "You shouldn't have seed oils and blah, blah, blah." He knows that the consequences are his to bear. It's not my body that's going to have that food. It's his. And so, he'll even tell me things like, "I'm going to eat this, but then like, I'll work extra, I'll work out extra hard or whatever." And I have 4 kids that all are in great shape. They go to the gym or they do exercise. They do so. So it wasn't me telling them, "You can't eat this," that got them all into that place. It was just like, "Hey, I think that, if you want to live a long, healthy life, you should probably eat better, stay away from these foods, stay away from these things." And they've taken it to heart, and I don't have to fight with them. It's a beautiful thing.
Can learn a few things about parenting. I gotta get ready because I don't know. I might meet the right one of these days if I get lucky. I don't have kids yet, but I definitely want to get married and have kids. I mean, for me, being a father is like my grandfathers were a big influence in my life. So I understand what a man's or a father's influence in a child's life, So for me to like be the father to a child and influence them in that way, I think that's like the ultimate purpose for a man's life.
I think it's the ultimate purpose for everyone's life. But also, you don't have to wait to to have your own children. I'm sure that there's young men in your life right now that you could mentor as well.
I've met a few.
Yeah.
I've met a few. Yeah.
I've now taken to the my kids are all older. My oldest is 23, and my youngest is now 15. So I'm almost out of the parenting stage and into, like I said, once you turn past 18, they become my best friends, and we're super close. So I'm almost into the best friend stage with all of them, and I've taken on the role of it doesn't stick. I feel like my friends think I'm too young to be like the Liberty grandma, but I have friends now that are younger than I am that are starting to have their kids, and I feel like their kids are my kids. I mean, they're my grandbabies. And I really enjoy that role, and I hope to be a presence in their lives. So you don't have to wait to have your own kids.
Fair enough.
You can start somewhere.
Yeah. My mom lives with my sister now and my niece and my nephew, and ever since, bro, she's like the happiest abuela on the face of the planet.
Exactly.
It's been like
grandparents are better than parents.
Oh, 100%. There's no comparison. I mean, I lived it, but your parents unfortunately bear the burden of like being there every day, educating you and doing the things that actually benefit you.
Paying for your lifestyle.
And then your grandparents get to just,
enjoy
call you whenever they want and spoil you and like, buy you ice cream.
Exactly. We're going to skip dinner. We're just going to have ice cream. And it's like, okay, abuela, those things are wonderful. So I feel like I'm having those relationships with my friends' children.
Kids, yeah.
children's, and I love it. I'm enjoying it. I get to do all of these things again, and I'm waiting for my own grandchildren.
They say being a grandparent is how you get to correct all the mistakes you made as a parent.
Or you can try by not make. I mean, everybody makes mistakes.
No, of course.
But
Or just don't make the mistakes.
Or just don't make the mistake.
No, but you always.
It's hard.
You
no
always
matter
have a
what
different relationship with your grandkids than you do with your kids.
Oh yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna be the like worst spoiling grandmother there is. Because I mean, I do that to my kids' friends. It's like, oh, with mom and dad, you have to do these things, but with me, no.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, we're gonna take a quick break here from our second sponsor, and we will be right back. Alrighty, guys, taking a quick break from the podcast to bring you a word from our sponsor, Christian J. DePaz. Appreciate him for coming through. He offers a phenomenal service, guys. You know I'm a big promoter of entrepreneurship, owning a company, starting a business, doing your own thing, and chasing your own dreams. But as the old saying goes, it takes money to make money. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Christian J. DePaz and what he does. He gets funding for new and startup businesses. Christian, tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you so much, bro,
Of course,
for giving us the opportunity to come inside your podcast and help more entrepreneurs start their own business or scale their current businesses. So what we do here at Secure Funding is that we'll help you acquire anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000 at 0% interest rate business credit, so that you can once again start or scale your current business. So if you come here from our good friend Nelson, there's no that you're coming from the Mulhana Method podcast, and we'll take extra good care of you. With that being said, brother, thank you so much for bringing us on.
Of course. What are you waiting for, guys? Click the link in the bio. It's never good to have a big head. I mean, figuratively and physically. I mean, look at Martians. All the cartoons and stuff of Martians have these giant heads, and they don't look attractive at all.
But aren't they really smart?
Yeah, but they're hideous.
People are gonna wonder why we were talking about big heads.
So her headphones kept falling off during the commercial break, and then she's like, "Oh, this is only for people with big heads." She's like, "Oh, you know.
I need a bigger head."
No, you don't. You wouldn't be very attractive. Trust me."
I mean, I'd be very smart though, so maybe potentially.
I would argue that you're very smart now. You don't need a giant head.
Thank you.
To look like a friggin', a Martian cartoon with the veins popping out. You know what I mean?
But does it have to have the veins?
I mean, that's the typical stereotype, right? Even if it doesn't have veins, you just have this massive head, I think big heads aren't in.
So, Miami. We're both here in Miami.
Yes. We're both
Tell me what you love about Miami. And now I'm turning the interview on you.
Most people hate the people here, but the people are one of my favorite things. I can't get away from my culture. I'm depressed when I can't go to the corner and buy un cortadito and have a, oh, mi amor, ¿cómo tú estás? Bien, ¿qué tú quieres? Like, all that. I miss that.
I love that,
I
too.
love that,
Yeah, la chusmería cubana.
Yeah.
I love that.
And
oh, my God. If I don't go to Sedanos at least, like,
and then
once
I can automatically whip out the Cuban Spanish with you, and you know what I'm talking about, and I can say a Cuban joke. I can't not have that in my life.
I think it goes beyond that too. It's this culture of everybody here is here because they so appreciate this country and they're grateful that this country was here and saved us. I grew up in Venezuela, but my parents are Cuban.
So you're like double
the escapee. Yeah, we've escaped twice, and now I feel like, oof, we might have to escape one more time.
Well,
so
we ain't got nowhere to go. So hopefully this place doesn't fall apart because
I think Miami should become like its own thing. We are the capital of Latin America.
Yeah, no, we're definitely, I've said that multiple times. Yes,
because we are.
Definitely capital of Latin America.
And we're the capital of like the people who leave their crummy governments to come here. And now we're even accepting Americans. New Yorkers are moving here. And so like, it's like, hey, we have all this freedom stuff. Maybe we should just like, we're already our own thing. We're already like not part of the U.S. really.
It's not even part of Florida. Really.
Right. Anything north of Fort Lauderdale, it's like Florida.
Yeah.
Anything south.
You're from Florida? No, I'm from Miami.
I'm from Miami.
Yeah.
And what's wild, I see so many people talking about how bad immigration is. And then simultaneously, people are like, Miami's so cool. Really? Miami didn't exist
prior to
like
1959.
Yeah, like I mean,
much.
it existed on the maps, but like I've traveled the world, and anywhere I go, I've been in Japan, I've been in like Georgia, the country by Russia, and people are like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Miami." They're like, "Miami," and it's like exactly. If I said I'm from Mobile, Alabama, people would be like, where? The United States. Oh, the United States. Like, I don't even have to say Florida. I'm like Miami. They're like, Miami. Like, and everybody's excited to come here. And so we have this like weird thing in politics happening right now where people are like, you know, immigration is bad. Illegal immigration is bad. And I turn it around. I'm like, no, what you have an issue with probably is the welfare. You have an issue with this, you know, with the government giving people things that they shouldn't be getting. We should just have it like it was when the U.S. started. That's a whole conversation for a whole nother day if you want. But, you know, Miami is a city of immigrants, and it has its faults, but it's awesome.
No, 100%. I mean, without immigration, Miami wouldn't exist, right? So,
Right.
But I mean, you don't think every sovereign country should have a border?
What exactly is that border? What does it do?
What does it do?
Mm-hmm.
It draws the line, meaning this is
Draws what line of what
draws what line of what
specifically?
Specifically. Like this is my territory.
Like a geographical.
Don't pass this line. Anyway, it draws a geographic. There you go, guys. My ringtone. Yeah. So it draws a line in the sand. Like, don't cross here. If you cross here, you need my permission.
So you're saying that the border is the definition of private property.
It should be, yes.
So who owns that private property?
Well, in this case, that's a great question. I've never thought of it that way. Because a country isn't private property.
It's not private property. If you're standing on a sidewalk, who owns that sidewalk?
No one, really. They say everyone, but no one.
No one owns it, right? The
Right.
government owns it.
Right.
A park, a national park, let's say Yosemite.
Yeah,
Does it not belong to the world? Does it only belong to U.S. citizens?
belongs according to the government, yes.
But if I wanted to pitch a tent in Yosemite and live there for the rest of my life, and so that I don't have to pay tax, I can't.
No, definitely.
I'm not allowed to. So it doesn't really belong to me.
No, it belongs to no one.
Belongs to no one. I mean, we pay taxes to maintain it, but we don't own it. It's not private property. And so
You're right.
if you believe in a free market, then how can you believe that the government is the right person to decide who can be here and who can't be here?
That's a different discussion. What I'm saying is there needs to be a line where it's like,
That
listen,
line demarcates where the government can reach you and where the government cannot reach you. So let's say I commit a crime on this side of the border. The United States government can do something about it.
Right.
But if I commit a crime on the side of the border of Mexico, then the Mexican government can do something about it.
Right.
That is what the border does. That's it. It tells the government where their jurisdiction is.
But you don't think there should be some sort of checks and balances as to at least look into the people that are trying to come into this country?
Sure, that's a completely different argument. How our immigration happens, that's something that we should absolutely discuss. I think that it should be very Ellis Island, the way it was in this country for the first 150 years since its founding. So, number one, the thing that people I know aren't aware of is the Constitution does not talk about immigration.
At all?
At all. It is silent on immigration. The only thing it gives government the right to do is naturalization. So our founding fathers didn't believe that everybody should be a U.S. citizen, but they did believe that everyone had a right to come here as long as they wanted, to work and build their future and whatever, or not, as long as they could afford to, I guess. So, I think that it's a very telling thing that a country of immigrants has now moved away and we're calling immigration bad. And it's like, we only want our people, or, I hear a lot of Americans say that this was supposed to be an Anglo country of Christians who only speak English. And I don't recall where that was ever said. As a matter of fact, we had people from all over the world from the inception. Yes, primarily they came from Europe, but we had people from all over the world and we welcomed them all. And then we stopped welcoming them all. And if you're Chinese, you can't come. And if you're, if you're Irish or if you're a Catholic, you're less than it. But those were things that were put in after the fact. That wasn't our founding fathers. And so, yes, I know there was slavery. I mean, like, this country was not perfect, but it was as close to perfect as anybody in the 6,000, 8,000, whatever recorded history you want to go with has had. And we're getting further away from that. And I still haven't heard a good argument for why immigration is bad. And we need the U.S. government to decide who can come and who cannot.
I agree that the government shouldn't decide almost anything at this point. But my
So
point
who
is,
would decide it?
that's a great question. If there's no government, then we'd set
You
up a
and
totally
I are
different.
Cuban, right?
Yes.
So if you have Cuban family, and this has happened to me my whole life, I've wanted my Cuban family to come here. If I want my Cuban family to come here and I'm willing to pay for them for their expenses and take them on and have them in my property, who is the United States government to tell me no? And yet they have been telling me no. The United States government my whole life has said no. I never got to meet my grandparents. Why couldn't I bring my grandparents to the United States? My grandmother died in the worst conditions in a hospital bed in Cuba, filled with bed sores because there's nothing to do to help her. I would have brought her here and taken care of her in my own home if I was a child, obviously. But if that was an option, my mom would have done it as well. And we were told, no, your grandmother has to die in a bed all alone because you're not allowed to bring her over and take care of her. Who are these people to make this decision for us?
No, I agree 100% that the United States government is not only detached, they're incompetent. You
Right.
know, so yes, the United States government is not the solution. However, there does need to be a system to check into who's coming into the country.
Sure. Background checks. We can do it instantly these days. You can collect their fingerprints. You can give them a background check.
Yes.
You can be like, oh, you committed some murders. You know what? We won't accept you in the country. Absolutely. I'm not saying that that's not reasonable.
Correct. Now, which brings me to the modern day issue of I don't know how many tens of millions, because no one has the correct answer because there's no way to keep track of it, of the millions and tens of millions of people who are crossing the border.
Imagine
unchecked.
if we had simple. Why are people crossing the border? Because they have issues in their own country for the same reason that our families came here. So they're that, or it's an invasion, or whatever you want to call it. But if we had a simple method, you can't just come into this country. You have to go through a process. And for some cases, people in Venezuela, for example, the waiting list is over 100 years. 100 years. Who's going to wait 100 years? So
Right.
instead of waiting 100 years, you're going to take the risk and just cross the border. You're going to go through El Darién. You're going to potentially put yourself at risk, but you're going to do it because you're desperate and you're going to come here.
Right.
So if there was a method where you just showed up at the border, you hop on a plane, you get here, and they're like, what's your name? What's your address? What have you committed any crimes? Let's do a quick background search on you. Oh, and by the way, you're not getting anything. You get to be here. You get to work. You get to live. If you don't have anywhere to go, it's on you. How many of those people would be coming?
That's a great question. I think it would be a different number.
It'd
That's for sure.
it'd also be a different amount of, it'd be a different quality of people.
No, 100%.
It'd be people like, again, our families who came here for the opportunity, not because they were going to get something for free.
You're right.
So, you know, I don't want to change people's mind. I would just want them to think it through.
Mind you, the getting stuff for free or whatever it is, that's already part of the current establishment. So it leans into me agreeing with you about that. The United States government shouldn't be the ones making the decisions. It should be us. But it goes back to the original question. I mean, that I can totally agree with that. I don't see that being a problem. But so
I have a problem with welfare.
no,
I have a problem with stopping adults and children from being able to work and support themselves and their family. I think that is one of the most cruel, inhumane, horrible things that we do in this country. Is we tell somebody, come on into this country, but you can't work. So we're going to feed you. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you everything. And then we're going to force the American people to pay for it. And so you create a class warfare against people. And so not only are you just new to a country and you don't speak the language and you're trying to, you know, sort your stuff out, but you have this entire class of people that hate you. And for good reason. You're the reason why I pay more taxes. And the government's telling me you're the reason why I'm paying more taxes. And because you're not allowed to work and make your own money, some people go into stealing and do these horrible things. And so it creates even more of a problem. And then, you know, then they're gifted hotel rooms and Americans are like, well, wait a minute, how come I'm not gifted a hotel room? And then they're given cell phones and Americans are like, wait a minute, I'm paying $400 a month for you know, my family's cell phone service. So they create a division between us so we hate each other. Meanwhile, it's the worst system possible. I mean, I couldn't have designed a worse system if I tried to. And and the reality is, again, every time people are like, immigration is terrible, it's a bad thing, I'm like, I point to Miami. Yeah, I don't think it's that terrible.
I don't have a problem with people coming to this country. What I have a problem with is just the fact that this administration has just basically let everyone come in. They're not keeping track of it. They don't know who's who. Then you have things like those Venezuelans tearing up Texas and raping those women. So it's like, it's not so much that I'm against immigration because technically I'm an immigrant, right? It's
I just missed the boat by this
Yeah,
much. I was born here, and then 9 days later they took me to Venezuela.
pretty
So
much. So
I'm in the clear.
oh, you got lucky. You did the Bruce Lee. You left for 17 years and you came back right before your 18th birthday.
No. Both my parents were American citizens. They were just living in Venezuela. So
okay.
my mom was like, I'm not giving birth here.
Okay, all right.
But I was gonna be an American citizen regardless. I am not the anchor baby. Don't worry.
When did your parents come here?
My father came here late 60s. My mom early 70s. I get confused. I think my dad was 69 and my mom was 70 or 71.
So like the Peter Pan, that kind of stuff.
No. My dad was 21 when he came here. He was a political prisoner. He was attempting to escape Cuba. He married my mom. Like they were high school sweethearts, and he was like, "I'm leaving this place." So they got married really quick, so that he could bring her with him. And then when he was trying to escape, he got caught. He got disoriented and lost for 2 days, and then the police found him, and they put him in prison. They gave him a 6-year sentence. And a year into his sentence, my grandmother, also named Martha, planned the whole escape. And then last minute, my mom pulled it through, and my mom broke him out of jail.
That's a movie, man.
It is. And so my mom delivered him to Caimanera, which is a town right outside of Guantanamo, the U.S. prison base. And he swam from Caimanera to Guantanamo in the middle of the night one night, and the American soldier on this like little island in front of the base that guards the bigger island pulled him up and was like, "Welcome to America." And they flew him to New Jersey on the weekly trash route.
Union City.
Yeah. So, yeah.
You ever had the You ever heard of T.J. English? He's an author. You know who that is?
No.
He wrote a book about the 70s, Union City in the 70s. It's called The Corporation. It's pretty interesting.
Oh wait, yeah, the one that's talking about all the mafiosos. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the book. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good book.
I forget what his name, but the bolita, the
Yeah, Jose. I think the guy's name was Jose Miguel Batle. I don't even know how he got that name, but he was, funny enough, a war hero from the Bay of Pigs, and that's why everybody revered and respected him and loved him. So he kind of used that influence to, get the Italians out of Union City and like take over with the Cubans. It's a super interesting story. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but I like
you like the
mob stuff. So.
I do too. I think it's fascinating.
Bro,
Prohibition
isn't
creates
right.
Prohibition creates some interesting characters, and I feel like it's
just such a culmination of what people want, right? Like you just don't want people to tell you what to do. You want to go out there and do what you want. Obviously a lot of what they do is immoral. I'm not saying.
I mean,
I'm
minus
not,
the murder part, but
Yeah.
really, if it wasn't illegal, would they need to resort to those things? It would be,
right.
Government creates a situation, and then,
Things happen.
the only
Yeah.
way that you can get around it. I mean, drugs are illegal, so if people want drugs, and there's always going to be a
Supply and demand.
Exactly. It's a supply and demand. So people want drugs. So it's like, I'm going to make a lot of money if I supply it. But then I got to murder the people who are going to turn me in,
What's funny is in this day and age, I don't know, whoever doesn't admit that the war on drugs has miserably failed. I don't even know what planet you live on. But it does beg the question, should drugs be legal? And that brings up a whole slew of like...
What do you think, Mr. Libertarian?
This is a long one.
Who should decide for you what you can put in your body and what you can't?
Nobody. But again, there should be education, right? Education is
Who should educate you?
That's a great question. It should be... I think the best people who can educate as far as drugs are people who have done them and like really can tell you, listen, all right, this is what happened to me. These are the negative effects. These are the positive effects, blah, 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 blah. That's my kind of perspective. But then again, it's a biased perspective because I'd hire people who were like former addicts trying to warn them about the bad things.
You know that there's this rat study, and psychology was my degree. So I guess I said that I never use my degree, but here we go. There's a study on rats, and they built these two communities. And one, the rats were like in a tight space. They were unhappy, and they'd put in the cage, I guess it's cocaine water, and regular water. And once the rats would like figure out the cocaine water, it was like all day, just hitting the cocaine water. Were constantly like just drugged out.
That hamster meal must have been like...
They were constantly on drugs. But then they built
Right.
another city where the rats had all this like entertainment. They had community. You know, there were several rats. It wasn't just the rat by himself. It was like all these rats together, and they just, you know, they lived in Disneyland, and they had the same cocaine water and the same regular water. And the rats, they every now and then would try the cocaine water, like, yay, fun, but then would not do it regularly. Nobody got addicted. None of the rats were like needed that to live. And so, yeah, I think that's very telling about humanity, because who are the people who are addicted? Generally, it's not. And listen, obviously fentanyl is like a big deal, and don't get me, like some drugs are just stronger than your will, and
Right.
some people are addicted because they start off on prescription opioids. Like, this is a whole other conversation. I'm not trying to whitewash that. But just your general user who gets started on drugs is people who are very unhappy with their lives, maybe don't have a community, don't have
Or just bored.
yeah. You know, lots of people in pain, lots of people who, you know, emotional pain or whatever, they use drugs to numb that. And I think that that's very telling about our society.
It's another form of escapism, right? Because I've said in the past that if you're, you know, 100 pounds overweight and you love cheeseburgers, what gives you the right to point the finger at the guy who's doing heroin? You know, like what's
That's a great point.
yeah, like you're obviously addicted to food. That guy's addicted to heroin. The next guy's addicted to women. Like
Some men are addicted to, some people are addicted to porn. Some people are,
exactly.
there's something. I mean, you can be addicted to whatever makes you happy. Or whatever fulfills
I think
your life.
happiness is a loaded word.
Sure. Yes. Whatever
Happiness
fulfills
is
you.
subjective.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So whatever fulfills you. I
Whatever
think
fulfills you.
yeah.
And even I think a lot of times people who are on drugs aren't fulfilled by the drugs.
At
It's
all.
just it fills a void.
It doesn't fill the void. That's why they keep doing their drugs.
Sure. But it fulfills a temporary void.
Yes. Right.
And so, you know, I think it's horribly cruel what we do to people who are addicted, because every other addiction, we treat them. You know, oh, you're addicted to porn, there's a treatment for that. You're addicted to alcohol, there's a treatment for that. You're addicted to food, there's a treatment for that. You're addicted to drugs, jail for you.
No, but there's also like, going back to judging, society's like, oh, you're a drug addict, you're a lowlife. Oh, you're fat? Yeah, here's another cheeseburger. You know? And in our culture, right, you go to grandma, abuela, she's like, oye, come de plato, come. She's like shoving
And here's the
food
malta to go with
Bro,
it, because
and it's like, grandma, come on, I'm on a diet, stop. And it's just, it's okay in general, right? The fat kid, you just give him more candy, give him another chocolate bar.
I guess I can thank Cuba for keeping me away from my grandma. I didn't have that experience.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
You know, I didn't have that. So my mom would be like, eat. I'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
I didn't
And-
get that addiction.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because
Certainly addicted to other things. Coffee is definitely one
Well,
of them.
I think more important than anything is about being conscious of it. As long as you're aware of it, then at some point you can
You know,
do
when I'm
something
on my
about it.
sixth coffee, I'm like straight to the vein. I'm going to be like, at least I'm aware of it. Cafecito.
you and Nick would Nick is the CEO. You would love him. He's very
Addicted to coffee? Yes, absolutely.
addicted is
My kind
definitely
of.
the word.
I wake up and the first thing I think about in the mornings is my coffee.
You're definitely addicted. for
I'm
sure.
definitely addicted to coffee.
Well, the first part of addiction is admitting you have a problem. So.
Yeah, but the second part is wanting to get better.
I don't think you want to get better.
Not at all.
Bro, Starbucks with those, they're not even coffee anymore. It's like a
What my
milkshake.
husband tells me with my addiction, he's like, every time I like have this addiction moment, he goes and he buys more Starbucks stuff. I'm making him tons of money.
Oh man, Howard Schultz loves you for sure.
For sure.
Martha, I would love to sit here for 3 hours because this is by far one of the most mentally stimulating conversations I've had on this podcast.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we'll do a part 2. Maybe I'll come on your show when it's ready.
Yep. Please do.
Yo, for sure.
We need to keep this conversation going. And
Yeah.
then I get to ask you even more questions.
I would love that. That'd be amazing. So I always end my show asking 3 questions. So question number 1, what inspires you?
Freedom. Freedom inspires me. It's a nebulous concept. I think it means different things to different people, but freedom to me is my why in everything I do. I want to make sure that I leave this planet a better place than where I found it, for my kids, for myself, for humanity, and it's all about the freedom.
I love that. And it's funny because I've already told you I did some time in prison. Freedom. I never really thought about freedom. Like, what freedom? I was like, yeah, I'm free to do whatever I want. Isn't that what everybody has?
Nope. Mm-mm.
So when I'm forcibly taken from my home and put in a group of the wildest people on the planet that I've never met before in a dark room, and it's like, oh, so no, freedom isn't a right. Okay, gotcha. That's how that works. Freedom is very undervalued, I think.
It is super undervalued.
And not just for my situation that I went through. I mean, back home, Cuba and Venezuela and all these North Korea, all these places across the world where people are severely oppressed.
Right now, well, you and I both were very into the July 11th protests in Cuba, and right now we're seeing it happen in Venezuela. Just yesterday, I posted about Maria Oropasa, who is a 30-year-old Venezuelan dissident who was taken forcibly in the night from her home, and then the Venezuelan regime just put out a video mocking her. And so, freedom is something that we here in America take for granted.
100%.
And because we've come from these places, we can't take it for granted. And I think that's...
I agree.
As an American who sees things differently than I think the average American, it's my duty to remind Americans of what made America this place, this amazing, shining city upon a hill, the envy of the world, and something so unique. And so freedom is my why.
You know what's funny? In there wasn't many Cubans, but when I finally ran, because there was maybe 12 of us in like a 500-person prison, but there was this one Cuban that got there, and I was like, bro, I can finally talk to you. Like, this is Cuba. Like, it's just like Cuba. Like, you don't know if the lights go off, you don't know when they're gonna go back on. And when the store closes, you don't know when it's gonna open again. They want everybody to think the same. They want everybody to wear the same clothes. They want everybody to do the same thing. If you're different by any means necessary, like by even a little hair, you're ostracized. You're punished. Literally, Cuba really is a prison, and I experienced it firsthand. Like, I understand what both are like, and they're exactly the same.
It's a mental
nuts.
prison.
Oh,
they're both mental prisons. They don't just want to hold you physically. They want you. They want your mind too. And that's the same type of prison my father was put into in Cuba. He was put into the prison for dissidents, and they brainwash you or attempt to brainwash you. And that was a story from my childhood that I always remember. Like, it always just comes up. My father quickly realized what they were doing, and he went with it so that they would let him go into the work camp, into the gulag. It was like, yes, viva Fidel. I was wrong. Absolutely. Go, go Che, go all. And so they were like, oh, look, we reformed him. And it's always been that thing. I mean, I think if the United States gets further along this path of totalitarianism and you start seeing me, yay, Kamala, you'll know that they've captured me and that this is what I need to do to survive. But
Martha will never kill herself.
Never.
Gotta say that out loud, right?
I do. I will never Epstein myself.
There you go. One of the closest experiences I've had to having an out-of-body experience, it was close to sunset. I was sitting there was this picnic table and we had this big track in prison. It was really nice. And there was a forest behind the prison, so it was like trees. Turkeys would come out at night, sometimes some deer, some hogs. And it was really breezy, and it was beautiful. And I realized that I was only in prison as much as I wanted to be. They didn't have my mind. They didn't have my spirit. They might have had my body, but that's where I could draw the line. And, man, like, talk about like, you ever had, like, those deep thoughts where you just see the world differently?
Yep, all the time. It's called mushrooms, but...
I didn't have access to mushrooms in prison.
I'm sure you did. You just didn't know the right guys.
I never personally had access. I'm not going to speak on what else I had access to. Anyway.
There are drugs in prisons, believe it or not.
I know. I know.
There are. I know. It's funny how
some of you've never heard of. Trust me, there's some weird
probably
shit in
a lot of that I don't ever want to try. But I do think that the things that, it's funny how those same religious people we were talking about early in, tell you that the government knows better than God. God put on this planet several plants, and they're there to expand your mind. And I was so scared of it until I tried it, and then I was like, that's why they're illegal. That's why.
Psychedelics is a whole nother.
Psychedelics are a wild ride.
They are. Question number 2. What's next for you?
Podcast.
I love it.
I stopped believing in the ability of us to change by going into politics. I was of the belief, and I see a lot of people are still in this belief, and I can't fault them for it. It's the natural progression of things, I think. So you start off by saying, wow, there's a problem. Oh, this problem can be solved by, this political class. If only they didn't do this thing, if we could fix this problem. So you want to become part of the problem fixers. And so you go, okay, what's next? I'm going to advocate for it. That's not enough. I'm going to run for office. And then if I'm in office, I can change it. And then you realize that maybe isn't how it works. And so now I'm into this next thing, which is, I think, educating people. I think there's so much power in education. And I especially think that there's so much that needs to be done here in Miami. I do have this long-term goal to turn Miami as independent from the United States as possible, so that we can have our little capital of Latin America here, and make sure that if the rest of the United States decides that they don't care about freedom and maintaining that, then maybe we can just keep it here in Miami and show the world that this is really what America was about.
I like that. Sounds like an American dream to me, if I've ever heard one.
Yep.
Question number 3. How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question. I think if I'm remembered at all, that's because I did something. Because, all of us have great-grandparents. How many of us can name the name of our great-grandparent?
Besides me.
Besides you. I didn't get to meet mine, so it's more nebulous. So what about your great-great-great-grandparent?
Yeah.
Great-great-great-great-great-parent. And so if you're remembered at all, it's because you did something, either good or bad. It's because you did something. And so if I'm remembered, I hope it's because I inspired somebody, or I did something that meant something to people.
Love that. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This is
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll do this again.
For sure.
Alrighty, guys. That's another episode of Montana Method Podcast. Signing out. Your host, Nelson Rodriguez. Special guest, Marta Bueno. As always, push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
I've been out here hustling all my life. Every day we get into it. Really out here in these streets. That's day and night. Like there's nothing to it. When I was going through it, dog, I never got your call. I never asked for nothing, no. But now I want it all. I promise I'ma do it. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags.